Hey, I have my paintbrush in hand. This happens to be my watercolor brush. Um, and we're going to paint flowers today. Now, we're not just going to paint any flowers, but the lady who is on, Pat Fiorello, she makes these flowers glow unlike almost anybody else. And it's really interesting to see how she does it because it's not expected. It's kind of her approach to flowers is so much different than anybody else we've ever had. And you're going to love this. Pat Fiorello, welcome to Art School Live.
Thank you so much, Eric. I'm happy to be back and sharing a little bit about my approach today.
Oh man, I am so excited because you changed my life. You told me a couple of techniques because I was struggling. I was doing flowers and I was struggling, and you showed me a couple of things to get the vibrancy
Mm.
because usually when you paint flowers it's hard to get that sense of that real glow of the light coming through the petals and so on. So I hope you're going to give us a little of that today.
Absolutely. That's my intention today, to share my approach with people so they also can get that vibrant glow that's so characteristic of flowers. So I'm ready to go if you are.
I am, but I got to congratulate you. You just won the Plein Air Salon National Art Competition, and you got the best oil painting award for some glowing geraniums. I guess they're geraniums.
Yes.
And wow, congratulations. And tell me the story. You were in Italy. You couldn't make it to the Plein Air convention for the awards.
Yes. Yes.
And
Actually,
you didn't know you were going to win, right? You were told you're a finalist.
right. I was in the top 30 finalists, and I thought there's no way that I'm ever going to win. But some of my students in the workshop, we were in Cinque Terre, Italy, they said to me that Monday night, oh, the competition's on tonight. Are you going to watch? And I'm thinking, oh, it's so late. But then I thought, well, why don't I just check in? So I'm in my bed with my iPad. I had set my alarm clock for midnight. I turn it on and I'm listening, and then I hear my name, and I couldn't believe it. And it's funny because I actually watched the whole award ceremony, and I watched it a second time because I wanted to make sure I actually heard it right. So anyway, it was really, really such an honor. And the fun thing is that painting that you have that was received the award is of a scene of Italy, of a beautiful garden in Pienza in Tuscany. And also, it was the inspiration for my Vibrant Flowers video that I've done with you, where I go into greater depth about how to get that vibrancy and how to have colors look fresh and glowing in your flowers. Because the thing about flowers is they're the one thing in nature that is so vibrant. The rest of the landscape is pretty neutralized, but the flowers, by contrast, are that pop of color. And that's what makes us happy. So that's why I love to paint. So I'm
Yeah,
ready
well,
when you are.
make us happy. I have my brush, and
Okay.
so I'm ready.
Okay, good. I just want to show you what we'll be painting today, and just a quick snippet on how I got to this idea for what we're painting. So I took this photo right outside my front door. They're David Austin roses, and they happen to be near these plants called spiderworts. As a marketing person, Eric, spiderworts they need to change the brand name for that because it doesn't sound as beautiful as these flowers are. But the purple and the yellow and the green, all of that, when I went outside and I saw that, it makes my heart sing. So I took the photos, but then, this is not a great composition for a painting. There's elements I like of the colors. So I cropped in real close, and the flowers, of course, are my center of interest. So why not take up more real estate on the canvas with those? But I still wanted a few of these pops of the purple in there. And I love the way that the branch of this comes in from the top. These flowers actually kind of droop down a little bit instead of shoot up. So that was the idea. Before I do any painting, I always look at it in black and white. And this is kind of the no tan. I just did it on the no tanizer app on my phone, just to get a kind of the gross cut of what's in light and what's in shadow. And then I take it one more level to look at 3 or 4 values. This is more like the value range that we'd be using. The black and white is just kind of an extreme of what's in light, what's in shadow, but those are not the values you actually would shoot to paint for. So that's my planning up front. And then let's just get right into the painting. And I'm going to share how I get that glow.
Okay, so you go to a lot of extent to plan every time you do it.
Um, it's a few minutes that really, whoops, here I am. It's a few minutes that really pay off. And, painting is a whole brain activity. You need your analytical self, you need your passion, your creativity, you're seeing all of it. I remember in the Ken Oster video that you have, he talked about a kind of intellect, passion, intellect. You have to plan a little bit up front. And then once you have a plan, you can just jump in and with the joy of painting and not overthink. And then you come back at the end to think again, to analyze your work and critique it and see, what's missing, what could be improved. So I see that process as do a little planning up front because it's going to save you a lot of headaches during the painting and give you the freedom to be looser while you're painting. And then at the end, you'll come back and say, okay, what needs to be adjusted to take this to the next level and have it complete. So that's my approach. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it does take some deliberate thinking of how can I make this. Just because it was in my garden doesn't mean it's a good composition. And how can I make it better in terms of shape, value, color, and edges?
You
Okay.
grow your own. You grow your own flowers that you paint.
Well, my husband, when he retired, he became a master gardener, so he does it for me.
Wow, how
He grows
convenient!
them, and I paint them.
All right. Well, tell him to come here. We need some gardening around here.
Will do. All right, I'm going to switch over to the canvas.
All right. There we go.
Yeah, it's taking a sec here.
Okay. Our guest today is Pat Fiorello, and she's going to teach us how to do glowing flowers, and they will glow. And be ready. I'm ready. I have my watercolors out because I don't want to do oils here on the set and get all the equipment all messy. And so I hope this will work in watercolors too. But we'll find out.
The method is similar, but honestly, I started as a watercolor. So I did watercolor exclusively for 12 years before I ever picked up an oil brush. And this method is actually informed by what I learned in watercolor, which is the transparency or something backlit will glow. The white of the canvas in watercolor glows back to your eye through the colors. And it's almost like a stained glass window where light will come and you get that luminosity. And that's part of the secret here is I'm using only transparent colors in the initial block-in. So I have backlighting for the painting, and that's a big part of the glow. So what we're going to do to get started is just a color block-in. And I'm going to work only with transparent colors. And if you don't know about transparent colors, I do have a little handout and a chart on how to figure that out. So I think Amandine's going to put in the chat my email. If you want that, I can email that to you after the program. But basically, there's pigments that are transparent and that are opaque. And for the beginning, I'm only using transparent because I do want that backlit glow. I'm not going to use cadmiums. I'm not going to use yellow ochre. I'm not going to use white. But you've got, whether you know it or not, you've got a lot of transparents already to work with. If you have Indian yellow, alizarin, transparent oxide red, and ultramarine blue, which are pretty standard, you've got everything that you need. So what I do in the beginning is I'm going to take a little bit of mineral spirits, Gamsol, whatever you use, and I'm going to take an Indian yellow with maybe a little transparent gold ochre. Again, if you don't have these colors, you can make do what you have. And I'm making a very generalized shape of where my center of interest is going to be. I don't have to get this shape exactly right. I'm kind of, one of the fun things about this is you're kind of feeling your way through it. And I'm placing things where I want them, not necessarily where they are in the photo. I always treat the photo as it's just a jumping off point. It's just my inspiration. And this is my creation. So that's what I have to be worried about is how this is showing up here. So I've got these two flowers together. I love that they overlap and connect. I'm going to make sure that I retain that. And already they kind of feel a little rose-like. It's just thin, transparent color. So make them a little bit bigger maybe than you might want them to be, because we'll always cut in at the end with the background if we need to reshape things. But that's it. I'm actually doing no drawing, if you will. I'm making a shape, a mass of two roses that happen to be this shape. So what I want to do next is I'm looking at those roses. And if you look in the middle of the roses, if you're looking at the reference photo, it's really hot in there. The color temperature of the very internal part where no light goes is so much more rich chromatic than out here. The further out you go, the lighter it gets. But it's really warm and chromatic in there. And just an exercise to help you remember that. If this was the flower petals and you cup your hand, look how much darker and warmer and more colorful this becomes than when you're all exposed to the light. So that's what actually goes on in the innermost of the flower, because the light can't get in there, and reflected light is bouncing all around in there.
You're such a good teacher. That's a great example. Somebody wants to know what size canvas you're painting on.
I'm just doing a 8x10 today.
Okay.
So I want to get some of that hotness and that glow laid in now. These colors, when I finish this blocking, it's going to look so hot and garish. It's going to look like your kids or grandkids did it just straight out of the tube. But this isn't the finished painting. I'm overshooting the luminosity and the chroma because it's very easy to dial back too much color.
Okay.
Once you lose the color, it's really hard to get it back without scraping the whole thing off. So what I'm doing is I'm seeing that it's very hot in here. I want to get that in. So I'm just taking a transparent orange. However, if you don't have that, you could make your own with Indian yellow and say permanent rose, or Indian yellow and transparent oxide red. You don't have to have necessarily the exact colors. You can mix these transparents just like you mix all your colors. So I'm looking for where is it really hot. I want to keep this thin. That's why I've thinned it with Gamsol, but it's not super runny or anything like that. So I'm just getting that heat built in here. And the centermost is the hottest. This is not thick paint. We don't want impasto or anything like that at this point. I just am setting up. I'm setting up what's to come. It really, could even be hotter than that. Because when I look at that, that is really, it's glowing in there. And I know I'm going to lose some of that along the way. So I added just a little transparent oxide red in some of the places where I really see super rich color. And I use several methods for different paintings. Sometimes I use this for landscapes, but sometimes I use other approaches. But for flowers, because they're so bright and luminous, this works really well, because the main, between shape, value, edges, and color for flowers, you're going to have to address all four in every painting. But for flowers, you really need to get the color on. The next thing I'm going to do is just put a little placeholder for where I like this branch coming in. I might move it a little bit. So I'm just going to put a placeholder for that. I can adjust it later, but maybe have that there. Okay, now what I want to do, I have this purple. I think this is very malleable at this stage, so I can change it. Like, I think I want to make this flower a little bit bigger, just so they're not exactly the same size. So add a little bit of that in. Okay. The next thing, the purple is a really pure color. So I want to get that purple, and I love it. It's a gorgeous color, and it's a nice complement to the yellows in here. And purple, yellow, or orange, and green is a secondary triad that works really well. So what do I have for transparent colors? Well, permanent rose is beautiful with ultramarine. Those are pure colors. They only have red and blue in them. So I'm getting a really nice, clean purple. And I'm going to see, where do I want to save some of these? And I'm just making in shapes. I'm not even really thinking too much petals, or this is
So
sort of,
that's alizarin plus purple, or that's just
um,
purple?
this is a permanent rose plus ultramarine blue. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm just putting it in. I'm not so much even referring to what's here, but putting them where I think it would be nice to maybe move your eye around the canvas. They may stay here or they may go. I don't know, but I'm reserving the place where I could have really clean purple, which is something I do in watercolor too. If I've got a watercolor, typically you put watercolor the lightest color first. But if I have a lot of flowers, say in a garden scene or something, I will put in the color of the flowers first, because I don't want that to be like sullied by anything else that's going to be there. So, thinking about sort of a placement, maybe that goes off the page, that goes off the page, maybe some down here. Okay, that's enough. So it's just giving me a reminder and a placeholder that I've got a space where I can have really clean, vibrant purple.
All
And you
right.
could, make them a little blue or red, or if you want. Okay, that's it. Now I've got leaves. What am I going to do with the leaves?
I
Well,
don't know. What are you going to do with the leaves?
that's a good question. Most of the rest of this whole scene is going to be green, but I want some of the greens to be more vibrant, and some of the greens, like in the background here, are neutral. And I need some of those to push that back and pull the leaves forward. The leaves here are more sunlit, and they're more in the spirit of the vibrancy of this. All this background stuff I need to recede. So those are going to be dull. So the leaves that are going to be brighter, I'm just going to go in with a yellow right now, just to give it like some sunshine, and just say, where might I want them?
That
And
doesn't look
it's
like yellow to me.
it's Indian yellow, and it might have a little bit of whatever that orange was left on my brush. So, but you know what? This is only an underneath, so I'm going to go over it. I'm just sort of retaining some sunlight. Let's put it that way. All right. It looks a little crazy already, right? And I don't
Does. Yeah.
necessarily want drip, but the last thing I need to do is put in where I'm going to have the background. So you might say, okay, well, the background's green. Let's mix up a green. However, I'm going to do the opposite for the background. Instead of
Oh,
putting
no.
in the color I'm aiming for, like here, I went for the color I was ultimately going to, shoot for, because I want to reinforce that with the next layer of paint. For the background or anything more muted, I want to keep that contrast, that these are really vibrant and those are more dull. So I'm going to shoot for the opposite of the green. So I'm going to do, I'm not going to go for pure red, but transparent oxide red, or transparent earth orange. Those are both, in the name says transparent. I'm just going to put those down. If they bleed into the stuff and get lost, it doesn't really matter. I am going to come on top of this with other colors. Um, so this is just my setup. This is, it's like a game of chess, anticipating what's to come next, saving the spots for my vibrant color that I'm going to reinforce further, but they're on the white of the canvas, so they're really going to glow. And then I'm going to come in here with the background color that's going to be covered up mostly, but little bits of it'll pop through, and that makes a nice little vibration. So this is kind of a impressionist style kind of approach, and leaves me a lot of freedom to be loose with the brush stroke and not worry about every petal. So that's the end of stage one. So stage one, the intention is to lay the groundwork for what's to come, save the place for the vibrant colors and the glow, cover the canvas, and now I'm going to go on to stage two. You could wait for it a little bit to set up and dry, or not. And in today's, because we have just the video here today, I'm going to go right in. I'm not going to wait. And that's okay too. But this is just underpainting. Now I'm going to stage two, which is a different mindset. Now I could use all my paints. I can use the cadmiums, yellow ochre, white, all my opaques and all my transparents and any mixture. So then you're painting just as you normally would. And now I'm going to get more refined. This was just the start. I could even lose some edges on these things. So this is a blurry start of where I'm headed with the placeholders. So the next thing I'm going to do is start tackling the flowers, because that's really the important part. And I still think this orange needs to be even more. So this is still the transparent orange, or your own mixture of transparent orange if you don't have it. I'm going to just hit it a little bit more, because I know as I'm working, I'm going to lose some of this. Okay. All right. So next I'm going to clean off all that paint and show you how you go to stage 2. And then this is actually working towards the finish. So you see, you could really kind of get a quick start, get some excitement going on your canvas. And it's not a belabored drawing that I'm trying to render everything exactly. I'm just going in there and having fun with color. And,
Our
that's what this is
guest,
all about.
our guest today is Pat Fiorello, painting vibrant, glowing flowers. You got to watch this. This is really good. Hey, I'm kind of curious, what's going to come up? What are you going to show us after this step?
Okay, after this step, we're going to see how do you take this rough start and actually create it into something that gives the illusion of a complex multi-petal flower without slaving over every petal. Because my students really get caught up in trying to get every petal accurate, and it's really not important. You're not necessarily going for the exact replica of the painting, of the photo. You're going for a feeling of it, a sensation of it. That's what we want. That's why we started painting. So that's what we're going to get into right now. Just a quote that I remember from Sir J. Bongard. He said, "What do you want to read? A poem or an itemized bill?" I don't want this painting to look like an itemized bill. I want it to be inspired and have the feeling of the scene that I saw that had me excited, but I don't want to be trapped into, I've got to have every petal exactly in place. That, it becomes no more fun at that point. So what we're going to do now is look at values. We've got general shapes and general colors. We're going to look at values. So I'm going to go back to my grayscale of photo without the color and just start looking for where are there shapes of more shadow and more light. Here, the light's coming from the top, so this is going to be more light, but I want to see the relationship between this light and this shadow, or you can see that as well in the color. So down there, down on the bottom is where I see some more shadows, and I've mixed up a few different colors that kind of have maybe a little green note in them, a little orange note, a little bit duller than what's going to be on the top, and a little bit darker. So maybe like a little yellow ochre, uh, a little transparent oxide red. I can adjust these colors later, but I just want to get in kind of overall shape of where is it more shadow here. And I'm not worried about the little teeny weeny pieces. I'm thinking about this whole shape here, and then we'll do the top shape, almost as if you could cut the shadow and the light out with a scissor. And they would just be pieces of like construction paper, something like that. So I'm coming around and just starting to, you see, this is dulling down now, which is what I want. I want this glow to be bright. I want this light to be bright on the top, but down here can be a little bit darker and duller. In fact, it could be, as I'm looking at it, it's even maybe darker than that. So I'm getting in where I see shadow shapes, and then I'll come in later with the light on top of it. And as I'm doing this, I can start to pick out some more specific shapes. I'm not, again, too worried about the whole perimeter, because I'm going to clean that up with the background when we get to
So
that
if you
point.
were doing this in watercolor like I am as we speak, you can't bring the light back over it. You have to just kind of anticipate that.
Right, you'd have to save it. So you, based on your value, uh, either value sketch or your black and white photo, you'd have to see where do I want to save those. And watercolor is great training because it has you plan ahead. You know, I'm glad that I learned watercolor first because it has me be thinking about values from the beginning. Okay, so I'm taking away some of the, again, this is sort of a big mass. I'm not getting into individual petal strokes yet. So I've got that in there. And now I'm going to switch over to start getting in the light.
Tell us the name of the grayscale app you mentioned.
Notanizer. It's Notanizer. And it's not the only one. There are several out there, but it's easy to use and it really helps. I try not to use it as a crutch, you know, but it does help you start to think about where should I be looking for light and shadow. So it's a good starting place. Even when I'm out on location, I will take it out and take a photo. And you'd be surprised. Sometimes things trick you and say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that roof was so much lighter than I
It's
thought it was.
especially true with certain colors like yellows.
Mm,
You think they're brighter than they are.
yeah. All right. So I'm starting to place in the big shapes of light. And this isn't going to be the end of that. I'm going to go in and break up these smaller pieces later. But I'm just getting a kind of a big cut at light and shadow. So my tip for simplifying painting is we want to do 3 stages. We want to get the shape, just a general shape. We want to then get light and shadow. And then we want to get details, which are just small shapes. What happens so many times, we're so excited to get the details because you see all these little nuances of the petals that you skip over the second stage. And people are pretty good about getting an overall shape because they can draw it, but then they lose it when it comes to the middle stage. And then they wonder why the flowers look flat. And then they just keep piling on paint to get it with texture, but it never can get that depth that you can by getting the form with light and shadow. So this is that second step, which is building up form. Little by little, I'm looking for what's the general shape here and what's the general light and what's the shadow. On some of these yellows, instead of always defaulting to white to lighten, a lot of times I like to use Naples yellow because it can lighten without cooling. And especially if I've got flowers that are in sunlight, I don't necessarily want to make them a lot cooler. So that's a little tip that that can help you get light without getting cool. Now I'm starting to come in here and notice the shape a little bit more of where some of these big petals are. Not so much that they're petals, but they start helping me show the form of this flower. And it doesn't take a lot to start feeling like a rose. I'm using sometimes the edge of my brush to make a thin petal-like shape. And then sometimes I'm using the flat part of my brush to make, you know, a broader. So these brushes are, you know, meant to be used in lots of different ways. I use it as like a sculpting tool. That's how I think of it. It's helping me sculpt this and pull it out of the underpainting. All right, I'm going to trade down to a little bit smaller brush as I'm getting some into some smaller shapes here. And if you keep thinking they're just shapes of color, that always helps me because the minute you think petal, you really, your mind concentrates on that and it's a whole different thinking process. So try to say, what is the shape I'm seeing there? And I'll come in here in a little bit and add a little bit more shadow into that. And then every once in a while, if I squint and I'll see, wow, there's a really nice piece of light here. And I want to get that in because it helps me describe the form. The flowers like this. So sometimes a little petal here will pop out and get clipped by that overhead light. And that's the excitement about painting flowers, that it is an overall shape, kind of like a ball or cup. But then because of the petals, they'll have a little pop out that defies the form. So it's kind of a balance of catching enough of those pop outs that it gives you the feeling of uh, the flower and its true form, the architecture of it, but not so many that you break up the big form. And it's a very delicate balance, but it could be a lot of fun. And after all, that's why we're doing this, to create fun, beauty, uplift people with the things that are beautiful. So I've got, some of the light here, some of the shadow here, starting to get kind of that ball feeling. And then here, the same thing. Let's do that. We start to come in. I've got this shadowy here, and I can come in with something a little bit, lighter here. When people say, well, how do you know which petals you want to articulate here? I kind of squint my eyes from time to time and or close them and open them and say, which ones really pop out to me? Because those kind of define this particular flower. Um, it's almost like, people have body language, or it's particular to this rose, not only this type of rose, but this individual rose. There's a few of them that pop out, and I call them the important ones. They're important for me to capture because that makes it recognizable at this. If I get like 3 or 4 of those that are idiosyncratic to this rose, people will think, oh, that's that rose. They don't have to worry about the other 50 petals that I didn't spell out. So just do a few, like there's something down here that's kind of unique to this flower. Put that one in. But I don't have to put them all in. Here I want things lost, kind of. I don't want to even separate those two. And then here, I'm going to put something in here. It's not necessarily going to be as light as some of those others, but there's activity that's going on here that I could see. They're just shapes. Just keep thinking, painting shapes of color. What does that shape look like? If I had to draw that shape, what would it look like? So they're starting to have some description of the petals, but not overly rendered.
That's really looking like a rose. It's
It
amazing.
doesn't, the secret is it really doesn't take that much. If you really stick to, looking for the light and shadow, articulating a few petals that pop out, that's enough. And then in places here, also, there'll be a softness as it goes in, like the outer edge is harder, and as it goes in, so just lightly, kiss that with your brush where it goes in, because it goes underneath that. So I'm going to stop this for a second and then just start to do the background a little bit, so you see how I would start to carve those shapes. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears. Um, I am going to I like to use the flat brushes a lot for the backgrounds, because I do want some crisper edges someplace, some softer edges someplace. The background is going to be more muted, except for where I'm going to place some of those bright leaves. But I'm going to start coming in, and I have a green I mixed up. I want a muted green, so I started with ultramarine and a little bit of yellow, cad yellow. And I used pink here, so I might throw a little pink in there just to dull it a little bit. And let's see, and I want it darker because the darker I make this, the more these these petals are going to pop out. I don't want 360 degrees around to be cut out. That's going to be too harsh. But a few places, especially on these main petals up here that are in the light, could stand to be, uh, a high contrast, harder edges. While I'm doing this, if you see, I'm starting here at the edge of the flower to make a crisp edge where I see a crisp edge, but then I lifted this up and dragged it out. And you see, as I'm dragging it out, you can see some of that orange. I'll see if I can move this. I don't know if that helps. That you can see some of that orange also glowing behind it. So even though this is going to be a more neutralized area, I like having a little bit of that glow, that warm glow behind it. I can go back to a little bit bigger brush.
I've switched to gouache. I couldn't do it with watercolor.
Yeah, it's watercolor's the reverse thinking. I mean, there's principles that I've used here that I learned from watercolor as far as the transparency, but the method, I have had people do this in acrylics and also in pastels, but for watercolor, you need the opposite steps. But you see there, we're starting to carve some of that out. As I'm doing that now, it's looking even more like, this flower. Back here, there's going to be some super dark because I'm going to have those brilliant. So I'm painting this wet into wet a lot like I would a watercolor. Just mushing, letting this mush into that and losing edges.
How fun. How fun.
Do we have any questions that anyone has? I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I can't paint and look at questions at the
Oh,
same
okay.
time, can I? All right. I don't know. Put them in there. No, I don't see any. Rosemary Clark says her painting and teaching style makes me helpful of being able to paint flowers. Rosemary, you are able to, but get her video on flower painting. It's in depth. It'll really take you to the next level.
What we do on that video, it's 4 hours of content, and we go through everything from the planning all the way through the signature. So every step of the way, and I go through a lot about the how to understand the difference between transparent colors and opaques and what they can do for you. Because the more you understand what's in your paint tubes, the more power you'll have with understanding how to mix them and how to use them for best effect. So those are important things. In watercolor, we do talk a lot about transparent and opaque, but I don't hear as much of that in oil. And it really, as I hope you're seeing, it can really make a difference. You start seeing that I'm pulling these flowers out from that original flat wash that we had, just pulling them out. How are we doing? Oh, we have about 20 minutes.
Oh, we got 20 minutes. Yeah, we're doing
Okay,
great.
Good.
We are rocking it, baby.
Well, I love to teach.
You're good at it.
Oh, thank you. It's one of the ways that art just elevates our life. I was not always an artist. I didn't go to art school or anything like that. I came to it much later in life, but it really has enhanced my life in so many ways. And it's wonderful to teach other students and see the light bulb go on. Because when you're teaching art, you see it show up on their canvas or on their paper, and like their light bulb went on, and it's very rewarding in that way. Once in a while, I kind of lose my drawing because this is very wet into wet, this whole method. So if I decide, well, you know what, I'd like to make this a little bigger, I could take a palette knife, or I'd like to use these Kemper tools just to scrape out a little bit of, okay, I want to regain that shape there. I want to maybe carve in a little bit more here. So this is really good this whole method doesn't involve a lot of precise drawing up front. So if I need to adjust something, this helps me find my way. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more of this, and then maybe we'll tackle a couple of those purple flowers. So stay tuned for that. See the fun of purple, and then we'll continue on with building a little form in the flowers themselves. So
All right.
try to move this along. While we're here, what if we try to put on some of this brighter green? I just mixed up a little bit of a green starting with Viridian. So when I wanted the duller green, I started with ultramarine that has a little red in it that'll kill off the green. But when I wanted a brighter green for the sunlit green, I started with Viridian, which is going to give me a more chromatic green. So remember I said I wanted this to feel sunlit, and so I can just lay this on top and get a little bit of contrast of greens and things going on. Greens are one of the hardest colors. And actually on the video, I do a little segment on how to mix natural looking greens, because
Well,
the
that's tough,
greens,
isn't it?
yeah, the greens that are in the tubes um, uh, just are too cold. So you need to add something warmer to them. And the good news is you got plenty of warmer colors on your palette that can adjust. But sometimes people get really scared, like of the phthalo greens and viridians, but they can be really, really helpful. So don't shy away from them. Just learn how to use those tools. So I'm just bringing in a little brighter there. Maybe we, adjust a little bit. While it's wet, just add another little change of color in there. I'm just going right in there so they're not all exactly identical. And down here, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but while I've got this, because I don't think we'll be able to finish everything today, but we can get a little bit of each section at least covered. Here's where you can, add in little pieces of these stems of the spiderworts. However, don't think of them of all those stems or leaves. Think of them as an opportunity to repeat this bright color someplace else in the painting, right? The painting's all about unity with variety. I can have variety of shape, but a repetition of that color someplace else to help move your eye around the canvas. So every stroke that I'm making, I'm thinking about where do I have an opportunity to make the composition better or more exciting, or add some energy, add some life. And I'll come in later with that branch. I don't need to deal with that now, but I've got some of that going on. Maybe it would be nice to repeat a little of that color over here. So we had a plan that we started out with, but I'm also responding very much to what's going on here, and where might it look good to repeat a color or help move your eye around. So let's just fill in a little bit more down here.
What is the tool you're using? It's just a scraper tool or a little
The
rubber
tool
tip
that I
nudge.
use, yeah, it's called KEMPER, and it's got one little rubber tip.
This
and
has
one
been the Plein Air Podcast with Plein Air
and one little angular edge. So you could, if I wanted to find that branch again, I would do that.
by email. Eric.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Are
Oh,
you
okay.
there?
Good. Yeah, all of a sudden I heard something went out. So, okay. So just real quick, might as well just block in the rest of this a little bit. And then I'm going to do the purple, a couple of purple. All right. Purple is fun. Um, I like, it just happened to be there in the photo that there was some purple that overlapped this, but that was a good idea. I like that because it would be nice to have overlap. Anytime I have an opportunity for overlap is wonderful because it gives me another dimension of depth. So I just have ultramarine blue and a little white and a little permanent rose. Or you could also use a little magenta. And I'm just going to pop a few of these shapes here and there. That one I made looking fairly realistic, but the rest of them don't have to be. If I have one or two that look pretty realistic, um, people will just assume the other ones are. We don't have to tell them everything. We just need to give them a few clues, and then they get it. If you got a bunch of green stuff around the flowers, they get that it's going to be leaves. We don't. You could report a couple, and then you don't have to report them all. Back here, I do want to have it a little bit more in the distance, so I'm going to add a little bit more white. And it repeats this color, but it's a little different. Unity with variety. And
Unity with variety.
that's it.
All right.
And you're starting to see that purple will kind of move your eye around.
Yeah.
And I try to change them up. Sometimes I do on my palette, whether it's watercolor or oil, I'll make multiple piles. So I'll make, a purple that's a little towards the red side, a little towards the blue side, and I have them mixed up on my palette. So I just remind myself to add variety so that every single flower isn't the same exact color.
Right.
So that's just a little tip. Painting, like everything else, is a function of our habits. So if we can come up with habits that support a beautiful painting, that's going to work for us. We might have habits that don't work for us, and we want to change those. But
I have a lot of habits that don't work for me.
well, that book Atomic Habits, that's really good on how to add good positive habits and get rid of your less effective habits. Okay, so we've got a lot built in here. I mean, it's almost looking, towards the finish. Not quite yet, though. But now I can add a couple of details in here. I just added that little yellow, repetition, unity with variety, and that's enough. I'm not going to put it in for every one. I'm going to come back to the flowers because they need some more work.
Well, they do.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Right.
So let's see. Up here where I scraped off, now that created a mess that I don't want. So here's a good habit. Scrape it off. Do not try to pile good paint on bad color. That's another tip for, getting clean color. It's just going to mound up and be hard to operate with. Just get a clean color, or if the brush has got dirt on it, get a clean brush. It's easier to do that than fight with a dirty brush or piled of paint that you're trying to now cover. Okay, let's take a closer look at what's going on here now. Some of these have a very light edge. So now you've got basically your whole canvas covered. Now I can push the form, make more shadow areas on here, add a few suggestions of branches and details here and there a little bit later on. But I think the next most important thing is to start coming in a little bit more on finishing up the main roses here. And how I treat, the photo, or when I'm painting out on landscape, I treat it like a buffet, the all you can eat buffet, that it's got all this stuff out there, but you don't necessarily want it all. So I will pick and choose. Okay, I want a little of that tree. I want a little of this petal. I don't want any of that petal. I don't want any of those leaves. And so I use that as like a suggestion. And if it works for me, great, I'll include it. If not, delete it. Right now I made that petal a little bit bigger, not because it's in the photo and I have to replicate the photo, but I like the idea that it overlapped something else. So that works. So I'm going to include that. Some other shape, maybe I don't like, or maybe it's distracting from the composition. Get rid of it. You have the freedom to, this is your painting. You have the freedom to do whatever you want to it. Okay, let's come down here a little bit more. And there might be places where I want to go back in with a transparent orange and say, okay, you know what? There's a beautiful glow over here that's very particular to that flower. And I'm putting it in, yes, it represents this flower, but I think it also brings it to life a little bit. So I started with the glow underneath, but I can always add more. I'm adding more of this transparent paint on top of the transparent paint. I'm still going to get that glow. I hope you can see when I'm done with this. I will send it to you or post it so people can see. When you see it a little closer, you can see the color glowing through. So I'm looking for, where do I see some glow that I want to enhance? There's some over here that I lost. Sometimes I'm going in with a pretty forceful brush, and sometimes I'm going in just with like a whisper, like here, just barely touching the canvas, because I want to have a little bit of a softer edge and not maybe as powerful a color as over here. So every brush stroke is intentional. What am I trying to do? What shape am I trying to make? What edge am I trying to make? What color do I want to bring into it? Should it be lighter? Should it be darker? Down here, I think it's still glowing a little bit, but maybe a little bit too much. Let me see if I bring a little bit, maybe I want this color down here to get a little bit more neutralized. And even, I could take a little of that lavender that I had and put it in with my shadow color, because there's some places really tucked in under here that are much darker shadows where these things overlap. So let's bring that in over here. So with this method, I hope that you're finding it's kind of fun, easy, a little bit more spontaneous. And you could develop this as much or little as you want. I mean, I could, work on this maybe 10 more minutes and say, okay, I'm done. Or I could work on it another day. I probably wouldn't, because I don't want to overkill. But if you're a person that likes to put in more detail, you can put in more detail too. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just what your intention is as an artist. Do you want a more tightly rendered, or do you want something that's more loose and suggestive? That's up to you. So, but it's a very flexible method. I'm starting to look here. There's like a little bit of inner glow there that helps me separate out this back and have this be kind of a cup shape with these petals going back. So I want to bring that in and, maybe softly. I don't want a big line there, but softly. So I'm looking now for smaller shapes. I started with the biggest shapes, and now I'm getting progressively smaller and smaller. And one book I read, I don't remember who it was by, but it said, details are small shapes. I'm like, that was such an aha moment. Like, why did I never think about that? You think of details as a thing, like I'm putting in the details now. It's just that you're graduating down to smaller and smaller shapes. And when, I heard that, I'm like, that gives me a lot of freedom to think that they're just small shapes. It's not like there's something special. They're just other smaller shapes in the painting. I'm going to soften a little bit of these. I don't want them to look too cut out. So here and there, I'm just softening a little bit of an edge.
Mesmerized.
I hope you'll take out your oils and try this out, Eric, because it really is fun. And, when I went, I have to share, when I started, as I said, I was in watercolor first for 12 years, and then I moved to oil. And I thought, oh, it's going to be easy. I know color composition. How hard could this be? Well, it was a lot harder than I expected because I'd never used white paint before, and the cleaning the brushes, it was a lot harder. And I was very confused about, okay, making all these things dark and then lightening them, or put like burnt sienna under everything and then build on top of it. And when I learned this method, and I've kind of combined methods I've learned from a number of instructors over the years to my own thing, but when I came across this, it freed me up so much more to have fun again with the painting, rather than trying to get something right. Like you saw me put in these little purple flowers. I wasn't so concerned about exactly what was on the photo. I was just concerned about where would it be fun to have them on the painting and move your eye through. So it frees you up to be in the creation, the sculpting, the design of it as you go along. You have a little bit of a plan, but you're not wed to that plan. You have the freedom to change things, and you've saved your colors, so you've got so much flexibility to uh, to work on this. So that's really why I enjoy this method. um, and I hope people will, give it a try. And if it's new to you, then give it a few tries. Nobody ever learns something, once the first try. But if you, get kind of caught up in the drawing and too many petals and trying to get everything exact, and my colors look muddy, this approach will help you overcome a lot of those issues.
Okay. Well, this is
Okay.
great. Why don't you come back on camera so
Okay.
everybody can meet you if they came in late. All right. I'm going to reveal what I did.
Okay.
All right. Uh, it's wet. It's weird. It doesn't look great on camera, but
Oh, yeah.
hey,
It's getting there. Well, those
it's,
flowers definitely have some nice form.
well, I don't know about that.
Yeah, and you know what? You can continue to work on it. You can scrape some of the dark out and put some of the lighter leaves to get some movement. So there's so many things you could do, but this is like a living entity that you're sculpting in paint with this process.
Right. Well, I want to remind everybody that Pat has this incredible video. If we can pull that up, it's called "Painting Vibrant Flowers: Paint Your Garden." And how many hours did you say that was?
Including the interview, there's 4 hours. So the
Yeah.
lesson's about 3+ hours, and there's a couple of little mini lessons in there too.
Yeah, so you can cover things in a lot more depth, and of
Yeah.
course, we have professional cameras, high definition, and
Mm-hmm.
they really get in close and can see what you're up to, and you can take more time. So that's terrific. That's at painttube.tv. And Pat, thank you so much for being here today. I love your work. You're such an inspiration. You're an inspiration to me in so many ways. Your background is inspiring, and what you've done and how you've moved your life into this direction, and you're doing a great job.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here to share, and the opportunity for the video to reach more students than I can, just on my own. So I appreciate all you do for artists.
Well,
So
thank
thank you
you.
so
And
much.
I want to encourage everybody that we've put Pat's information, website, and everything into the chat, and so they can go there and visit her and check her out, go to her workshops. So she would love that, I'm sure.
And I
And
have whoops, maybe you can see it on this side. I have some tips on how you can figure out which of your paints are opaque versus transparent, as well as a list of transparent and opaque paints. So if you want that, just do patfiorello at AOL.com, and I will send you those two documents that help you understand a little bit of the distinctions between transparent and opaque, and how to figure that out with your own paints that you already own.
that's very generous of you. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're
That's going to be
welcome.
helpful. Everybody should do it. We'll put that website in the chat too, so you guys can see that. Ah, this has been an awesome day. I got to paint. I never paint along because I just never can, but I was so inspired. I'm going to. So Pat, thank you again, and God bless you, and have a great day. All right. Our guest
Happy
today is
painting, everyone.
all right. Thank you. Give her a thumbs up and applause and share it with others. Hey, I want to tell you about a couple of things real quickly. First off, if you are new to us, we're here every weekday at 12 noon, and you can subscribe on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and look up Art School Live. And we have started this at the beginning of COVID, the first week of COVID. So we have hundreds of shows. And if you watch just 5 shows, you will get the confidence you need to say, you know what, I can do this. I can learn to paint and we can teach you. Now, we, of course, we have hundreds of these. If you want to watch replays of any of the videos we've ever done, they're all on the YouTube account. Go over there and subscribe and then get in there and dig around. But if you want professionally produced videos like Pat's, we have painttube.tv, which has got over 700 art instruction courses, high definition quality, some of the world's top artists. And of course, it's on all the apps and smart TV and so on. So that's something to check out. Also, we have coming up Realism Live. Realism Live will teach you pretty much everything you need to know about painting realistic topics, whether it's landscapes or portraits or figures or whatever. And we have some of the greatest of great who teach in various things. So you'll be still life and oil and watercolor and pastel, a little bit of everything. There's a lot of instructors on that. It's 3 days plus a fourth beginner or essentials day, which covers the basics. And you'll want to be part of that. Realism Live is coming up in November. And we also have Pastel Live coming up in September. And we have Watercolor Live coming up in January. But then a brand new one, Acrylic Live, is coming, and that's coming up in March. And we haven't announced the faculty yet, but that is coming up soon. And we're very excited about that, as you should be too. Well, thank you for tuning in today. It's a pleasure to have you spend time with us. I want to thank Pat Fiorello for being here today. And thank you for taking the time. It really means a lot to us. I love it when you guys are involved in the chat, and I love it when you are sharing this with other people. Our goal is to help people understand how to paint and understand that you don't need talent. All you need is instruction and practice, right? If you get good instruction, which we provide, and then practice, you can become a painter. And we have had, we've literally heard from tens of thousands of people who have taken up painting as a result of watching this show. And we're seeing some success. A lot of these people are coming to our events now, and we're getting to see what they're doing. We had this one woman who watched all during COVID. She watched and she bought a bunch of videos, and then she came to one of our events and did her first plein air painting, and she knocked it out of the park on the very first time. That was a lady by the name of Min. And I was blown away. And I said, how did you learn to do this? She said, I just watched all your shows and your videos. I'm like, yes, yes. All right. Okay. Have a terrific day. Thanks to my producer, Amandine. And you guys rock. Take care. I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher, Fine Art Connoisseur, and Plein Air Magazine, both of which you should subscribe to. They're shoulding on everyone, but you should. All right. Take care. Bye bye.